Right before we jump into this video, if you'd like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations, just look for this orange box over on the website, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I will send you that guide for free. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a real world review of the Sony 12 to 24 millimeter f2.8 G Master lens. Let me repeat that one more time. 12 to 24, 2.8. That is insane. So I'm gonna review it, but let me tell you what I shot with it. I photographed painters painting, AKA that was more photojournalistic. I shot friends out on the stair steps. I also went to the Philadelphia Museum of Art where I did the wide angle at 12 millimeter with the Sony and then tried to compare it with the Sigma at 14 and the Sony at 14. And we're gonna take that upstairs to show you the side-by-side comparisons between those at the end of this review. I also photographed Boathouse Row in Philadelphia, as well as Blake, who is a skateboarder who came out to the factory so that we could get some action shots to see what it would look like at 12 millimeters. But I also threw the Sigma on there for one to see what 14 millimeters was, and I'm gonna help you decide whether you think you need this 12 to 24, or maybe you should just stick with the Sigma, which will be priced much less. I do want to remind you that you can download sample RAW files from the Sony lens as well as from the Sigma lens so that you can pixel peep to your heart's content. That's up to you to pixel peep. I can look at the images, but I am here to let you decide which one you think is better, to find any issues that you think there are, and if you spot anything, please leave them down below in the comments. Now it's time to take a look at the outside of this lens, and I do want to tell you that Sony did send us a review unit to go ahead and review before this lens came out. Now the first thing that you notice about this lens is it kind of looks like the Nikon 14 to 24 did, but remember, the Nikon lens came out in 2007 and was a 14 to 24 2.8. This is a 12 to 24 2.8. How did they do that? Well, I sat through a long call hearing about all of the technical specs that I may have slept through some of it, but I did put it on mute. But anyway, the front element, they spent a ton of time talking about what they needed to do with the front element in order to get the 12 millimeters and to have it work. And I will say, just from using it, it absolutely does work. But as always, you can't put a filter on the front of this particular lens. It does come with something that I'm pretty sure is a little bit of a template to cut a filter so that you can place it in the back of the lens where it mounts to the camera so that you can use filters that way. In terms of zooming, it's real easy to zoom. It's just a twist, 12, 24, 12, 24. That's really it. It's the same thing that you find with most lenses like this. Is it heavy? Well, it's actually not terrible. It weighs in at 1.87 pounds or 847 grams, with the Sigma weighing in at 1.75 pounds, 795 grams, and the Nikon one weighed in at 2.14 pounds or 970 grams back when it was released in 2007. It hasn't lost any weight at all. It still weighs exactly the same in 2020 because they haven't updated it at all. Now I do have the Sigma one here for some comparison, just physical nature wise. You can see that it is smaller, it is lighter. In terms of putting them like this, it's like the Sony's like, I'm gonna eat you, baby shark doot doot. It's like, I'm eating you. Ooh, can they touch? Oh, I'm not gonna do it. Ooh. Whoa, oh, they could touch. I'm not gonna do it. So let me put the Sigma one away. We'll talk more about this a little later when we get into the images and the comparisons. Continuing on with the outside of the lens, we have the G, which stands for G Master. We have a function button right here that you can program inside. I never use these function buttons myself, personally. I never do. And you've got the AF to manual switch right here. Overall, it feels like a well-built lens, and it better for the price that they're going to charge, which I'm gonna tell you a little later on. But I also want to tell you that Sony was big into saying that no longer is it about the Hebrew Trinity, it's about the Quattro Trinity, because they're considering 4 lenses. Oh wait, it's not a Quattro Trinity. You know what I'm saying. Quattro, 4 of them. They're trying to say that the 16 to 35 fits in there because it's a G Master. And I was like, guys, no. You have a 12 to 24, a 24 to 70, and a 70 to 200. Those are the three lenses to rule them all. You don't need a 16 to 35 in there. Throw it out. Don't call it a quattro whatever. Just, it's the Hebrew Trinity. These three lenses, that's it. Let's move into some sample images. Again, you can download them. The link is down below, starting here with Todd Wolf. Now, I had Todd over to my old loft that I just moved out of because he was the first person that I photographed in that space when it was completely empty 7 years ago. And I was like, Todd, do you want to come back over now that it's empty again and do another 5-minute type portrait? And this time, I used the Sony cameras, and this is with the 12mm lens. It is asininely sharp, even shooting through his thick Coke bottle glasses. Really, the glasses aren't that thick, it's the rims that are thick, but it looks so good at 12mm with this. I can get within 11 inches for close focus. This is a painter that is painting over at my old place, and you can just see how sharp his eyeball is. Look how freaking sharp his eye is. I got as close as I could get to get the close focusing. His other eye is out of focus. So some people may be like, well, at 12mm, it's gonna be infinite focus. It's really more about depth. Like if you had an 18 to 55 kit lens and you got close to the subject at 18, even at 3.5, you're still gonna be able to blow out the background and get some of that bokeh. In this case, just look at this. He's nice and sharp right there, and the background fades away. So it is possible at 12mm. Now, jumping back to Todd's photo, I just really like this photo. 12mm is definitely tough to shoot portrait style images with, but we got lucky with this creative style shot right here. Now, my friend is sitting out on the stoop right here, and what I was going for was, can I get my lines straight? How do the tones look? Because I love black and whites. This is a nice, thick, contrasty black and white. And at 12mm, you're getting a little more. Now, we'll show you some examples of what 12 is and what 14 is with the Sony and the Sigma, and then you can decide, do you need the extra 2mm? And I'll just give you the answer right now. And the answer is probably no, like not really, because, all right, I'm gonna tell you the price right now. $3,000 for this bad boy. The Sigma's $1,400. So keep all of that in mind because you're gonna have to figure out, do you wanna spend $3,000 for a lens like this? Do you wanna spend $1,400 for the Sigma, which I've enjoyed shooting with? It's been great on the campaign trail. It's done a fantastic job for me. I like carrying it around. So I'm gonna help you determine, is $3,000 worth it for this Sony versus $1,400 for the Sigma? But I do like the lines in this. It doesn't look too Bowie, not David Bowie. It just doesn't look too it doesn't look that Bowie, and that's out of the camera without any lens correction. Let me cut in here real quick and let you know that the image that you see on the screen right now was taken with this lens and edited with FroPack 2. If you're looking to speed up your RAW workflow or give yourself a really good starting point, we created 15 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPack2. While you're there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale, or if you pick up the FroPack bundle, you can save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. Moving on to the next one, this is fascinating to me. 12mm vertical. Look at the lines. Look at the top of the building. That is straight across. In terms of the bottom, that's straight across as well. So whatever Sony did to get the line straight with this lens, they've done a fantastic job to give me that ability at 12. Now, for me, I've never had 12mm in the modern era. I mean, you can count the 12 to 24 that Sony made that was an f4, but I hated that lens. It was just really vignette-y, even at f4 wide open, so and very distorty around the edges. There really hasn't been any company that has been able to do a 12 to 24 2.8 that's full frame at this point. Will Nikon be able to do it? No, they've already showed the roadmap. They're coming out with a 14 to 24 2.8. Will Canon be able to do something better? It's possible that they come with a 10 to 24 f4, or maybe they come with an 11 to 24 f2 or 2.8. We'll have to see what they come up with. But I love this photo because of the lines. You just have to be careful when you're shooting. You gotta find the right angles. If you're tilted too far this way or tilted any other way, your lines will be off. Continuing on, just getting some photojournalistic aspect photos of the painters painting the wall. The reason I picked this one, this is 12 millimeters, I just wanted to zoom all the way in and just look at his face. Just look how freaking sharp it is. Now, I was using the A7R4 for these type of shots just because I wanted the most megapixels possible. I didn't really need to use the A9 II for that, but I used the A9 II later on to photograph Blake skateboarding. But I showed this one because the tones on his face and the sharpness was spot on. And with the 12, you can get close to get your subject, but still be able to see a lot of the scene. That's the creative nature of, I love shooting wide. When I first started, I was all about shooting tight. And then, as I've always said for years, if you're at the Eiffel Tower and you do a portrait at 200 millimeters and you don't see the Eiffel Tower, I could have just done it in my basement. So if you can get creative and show the scene when you shoot wider, it's going to make your images more intense. Next up, same thing, super sharp right on his eyeball. IAF all day, or actually it went more to face detect because it seems when you shoot wider, IAF isn't going to be able to get the eye perfect. But at this case, it could do face detect because it's much smaller in the frame. Love that. Moving on, Philadelphia Museum of Art. There's a lot of reviews that I do. Whenever I have a wider angle lens, I sit down in this exact spot and take a wide angle photo of the art museum because it is, well, it's a really good test subject that I can, well, it listens because I could tell it what to do. And it's like, okay, just sit there. All right, don't move. All right, okay, stairs, be okay. And the stairs don't do anything because it's real easy to do this. This time I actually took my scooter out there, which meant I could park and then ride my Segway to this spot and sit down and shoot. It was amazing to have the scooter. That's how I got out to Boathouse Row. You'll see in a minute. This is 12 millimeters at 2.8. You can see vignetting. This next one is 12 millimeters at f8. So you can see how the vignetting goes away. Again, download sample images, the raw files. You can pixel peep. I don't give a shit about vignetting. I actually think that vignetting may add to an image from time to time by acting as a natural gradient and a natural frame that draws you into the subject. I've never had a problem with it. You can get rid of it in post if that's what you would like to do, but this is at 2.8, and then this one is at f8. Next up, I scooted down to Boathouse Row. They had Martin Luther King Boulevard closed off so that runners and bikers and scooterists like myself could go down there, and I found this spot, Boathouse Row. Usually with Boathouse Row, you see photos at night of it lit up. In this case, it was just bright daylight, and I wanted to go out there and get some landscapey style shots. Wanted to show you what 24 looked like. This is 24. Wanted to show you what 12 looked like. This is 12. Just to show you what the possibilities are. It does look like that it stretches out the buildings slightly when you shoot at 12 millimeters. It is what it is with 12 millimeters. You're usually not shooting landscapes at 12. Continuing on, I went down to where the dam was, and you could see all of Boathouse Row. And what was interesting here is I don't see any lens flare coming in from the sun, which is obviously up in the sky to the right. And then I was like, you know what? Why don't I just point it up at the sun and see how the lens flare works? Because Sony talked about the coating on this lens and how you could shoot the sun and not really get a lot of lens flare. I've noticed with the Sigma 14-24 that I've seen lens flare in it. It's never really been a deterrent. I don't look for lens flare. I'm not a big fan of backlit images. I know a lot of Instagrammers love the backlit look with the flare. I freaking hate it personally, but that's just me. But here we see a little bit of flare up there, and then the next one I decided to shoot straight up into the sky, and look at that. Nice starburst of the sun, and I'm not really seeing much flare there. That's just one of those tests to see how does the coating do. Next up, I wanted to test out the focus speed capability of the 12-24, which by the way has four, count them, four linear motors. So there's four motors working in unison in here to help you get super fast focus, especially when you put it onto the A9 II. So I threw it onto the A9 II to photograph Blake skating around the bowl right here and grinding the edge. I'm still not a skater, so I still don't know what the words are. But Blake is awesome. Soggy Cereal, I believe is his Instagram. I love that name. But I had him skate around here. The continuous autofocus did a tremendous job. This is 12 millimeters. I'm gonna show you upstairs when we go up there what 14 millimeters in the same spot looks like with the Sigma, and if the Sigma was able to keep up and autofocus on the A9 as well as the Sony. In this case, let's zoom in on Blake's face here. Super nice, super sharp. It was great. It acquired him with the A9. It followed him all the way through, and it gave me a cool, sweet angle. So I really like that shot. In terms of backlight, you know I hate it, but I know you guys want to see how it's going to look with a subject. So here's 12 millimeters. You can see it hobbitizes, you know, like a hobbit. It kind of like squishes you and makes you look a little smaller. And that's what's happening right here when you basically fill the frame for a portrait at 12 millimeters. But around the hair, I don't see any issues. I know a lot of people look for fringing, and do you see any purple fringing of any kind? I don't see any issues with that at 12 millimeters at 2.8. Now, if we go to the next one, this is at 24 millimeters, same thing. We go around to the top of his hair. I don't really see any issues whatsoever. And honestly, if I did, I still don't care, because all I care about is, did I get the shot or did I not get the shot? Continuing on with skateboarding, I got another angle, and look at that. I went vertical with the 12 millimeter, which I didn't really think that I was gonna go vertical too much with a 12 millimeter lens, because sometimes it's just awkward. But that photo at the very beginning of my friends on the step, where you can see that vertical with the perfectly straight lines, it worked for that. And in this case, it worked to get Blake going up the ramp here. He's super duper sharp. The background, 12 millimeters, 2.8, you can still see most of it. It doesn't really blow out as much, but you can see that the trees aren't super duper in focus because it's focused closer on Blake right here. All right, guys, I need your help, because the next image is very similar to the first one, but which one of these is better? Is it A, the first one, or B, the second one, and why? Let me know in the comments down below. Let me jump in here and let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio, use what I use for jaredpolin.com and get a 14-day free trial when you go to squarespace.com/FroKnowsPhoto. If you decide that it's for you, use the code FroKnowsPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now, back to the review. And then the final image of Blake, I went horizontal. I just love the shadow down on the ground. I love that I was able to capture him here. He's nice and sharp. The autofocus did a great job. It really didn't miss. The thing that I had to figure out was, which focus mode should I be in? Should I be in zone? Should I be on lock-on tracking? I found that the zone actually worked better because it used all of the focusing points, and it just bounces around in the electronic viewfinder, and it did really good at finding him and then tracking him all the way through the frame. Now, for the next couple of images, I thought it was important to send it back upstairs to my desk to show you the 12 to 24 versus the 14 to 24 2.8 Sigma. I have very similar images, and I want to take a closer look, and it's important to sit in front of the bigger screen to do that, to share the findings and information. Let's take a look at these two images from the Philadelphia Museum of Art. On the left, we have the Sony 12 to 24 2.8 at 14 millimeters. On the right, we have the Sigma 14 to 24 2.8 at 14 millimeters. Now, look at the exposure of the Sony one. It's at 1/3200th of a second, and the Sigma one is at 1/2500th of a second. Now, I set it to aperture priority just so that it would give the same style of exposure, the same reading, the same settings. In this case, it seems like the light transmission of the Sony is better. It's letting in more light. It's gathering more light. So even though they're both 2.8s, you can see the light transmission difference just by the exposure right here. So right off the bat, let's look at the lines right in the middle. On the Sony side, just look how straight the lines are right off the bat. Where with the Sigma over here on the right, you can see that it tilts down and then it goes back up right here. So it bows a little more, where straight out of the camera, the Sony just seems to be super duper straight right across, and the Sigma seems to be a little more bowed, at least right here in the middle. Now, the only thing that I had to do different here is I had the one camera set up, I had the lens on it, I took the lens off, I put the other lens on. That's gonna give you some subtle differences because of the size difference in the lenses. That's probably why the Sony is lined up the way that it is when we zoom right into the same spot. You can see that it's off ever so slightly. It's not perfect in terms of the same exact because the lenses are two different sizes. Now, I tried to focus them both here on the Museum of Art in the background, and I noticed something on the right-hand side by these bicycles. You can see that right here, it looks like the Sony one isn't super duper sharp on the edge right here. Whereas with the Sigma, the whole thing seems sharper right there. Now, I don't know if this was user error because on other Sony shots that I have, it's sharp on the edges. So I don't know, did the wind blow? When I set the timer, did something happen? I don't know, but maybe maybe the Sigma is sharper on the edges, but this is something that I really don't worry about. I worry about getting the image. We are zoomed in here 1:1 on 61 megapixels? It's 61 megapixels in the A7R4. You would never notice this difference, but I do want to point out that it is there. Next, let's move up to these blocks right here because it looks like ever so slightly that the Sonys are stretched a little more out at the edges, and it's a little more compressed here on the Sigma. But again, is that a big deal? Because what I care about is how straight the lines are here with the Sony at 14 millimeters. Look, I did this at 14 millimeters and 14 millimeters because I figured people would want to know the difference. Let me show you this. Let me pull up a 12 millimeter actually. So here we are at 12 millimeters on the left, 2.8, 2.8 on the right, and we're at 14 millimeters. Look at the difference. You have a lot more on each side. So you can see the difference inside. And now you can see, even at 14, look at the bowing down here on the Sigma one, and the Sony has a little bit, but it's better than the Sigma was at 14 millimeters. But look how much extra you're getting here off on the side. Is the 12 millimeters necessary for most people? No. It's just nice to have that extra width if you need it, and it's still super duper sharp. Let's look at the edges. Let's see if we see any difference here, because this will determine a lot. Yeah, in terms of the sharpness of these, let's go in 3:1. Let's just play that game. Let's just go in 3:1. They look very similar at this. Then again, is the Sigma sharp? It's so nominal, 3:1, you wouldn't know the difference. I don't know the difference. That's why I supply, oh yeah, look at that, guys. Can't you tell right now? Look at that. Oh my God, it's horrible. That's why I supply you with the raw files to go ahead and play with. But one other thing I want to show you is I want to straighten out use lens correction on the Sigma one, and then compare it. So we're going to go here. We're going to put on lens correction, enable profile correction, and you see that it straightens everything out and it stretches the edge more. Now we've got this edge stretched out over here where before it wasn't. And yeah, of course it takes care of vignetting, but look, it's still stretching it out, which is the same thing basically that the Sony was doing right out of the camera. So will lens correction do something when they put it in the Lightroom for the Sony? Maybe. It just seems that the Sony may be slightly better straight out of the camera without the lens correction. And then look, the Sigma's fine too. Either or, nobody's really going to know the difference. And the last comparisons that I want to show you, we've got Blake skating right here at 12 millimeters. Then I threw on the Sigma at 14, and this one is out of focus. The focus missed. It wasn't able to hit him here, but we did it again, because I don't want to just say that the Sigma didn't hit, because the Sigma did hit. Oh, and we're still at 3:1, even with the A9 II here. So let me go back to 1:1. And that is super duper sharp. So it was able to track him there. Is it possible that the Sony is just more accurate because it's native and it's faster focusing? That is possible, but I do want to show you that the Sigma is definitely capable of doing something nice and sharp and in focus. Let's put these two side by side. Oop, now we have on the right, we've got the 12 to 24, and on the left we have the 14 to 24. And look at the street sign right here. You have more of the street sign here with this light, and you don't have it on the other side. So you're getting a little bit more. In terms of angle, he's leaning back on the one on the right, and on the one on the left, he's leaning a little bit more forward. I kind of like that the frame is filled more, but in terms of sharpness, I mean, geez, they are, I mean, I like that he's filled the frame here more. So I like the 14 in this case. You don't always need to shoot at 12. You just need to get a little closer. So in this case, I could have been a little closer. If I tilt the camera forward or do something along those lines, it may have given me the same or similar effect as this, or I could have just zoomed to 14 because I can go from 12 to 24. But at the end of the day, they are pretty darn similar, and it's interesting to see what a $1,400 lens does and what a $3,000 lens does. But now, let me send it back downstairs to myself to wrap up the video. So before I wrap this up and tell you who it's for and which one I think you should get, whether it's the Sony or the Sigma, there's still two, count them, two very important tests to do. The first one is the sniffy sniff. Here we go. Ooh. Oh, it smells expensive. It smells like an expensive knife. Ooh, because it's so sharp and it smells like a knife. I have global knives, by the way, so they smell like global knives. I like them, they cut things. And what does it do when you blow on it for the wind tunnel test? I hope it doesn't fall off the counter because then Sony would yell at me. This one actually fails the wind tunnel test this time because the element is just not exposed enough to get that aerodynamic stuff going. So it fails the wind tunnel test. Let me jump in here and say, would you like to take better pictures in only 11 days? Well, if so, I created a free mini video course that you can sign up for right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/11 days. So who is this lens for? The truth, it's for me. I've wanted a 12 to 24 2.8. I want to go wider. Canon's had the 11 to 24 f4. I own it. It was $3,000. I got it for $500 off because it was an open box item when I bought it at Adorama a couple years back. I love the 11 millimeters. It's actually more Bowie than this bad boy right here, but it was an f4 and it was massive and heavy. In this case, this is the perfect lens for me to take around for photojournalistic work. It could be great for shooting concerts. It's great on the campaign trail. Like I said, photojournalism indoors, being able to see the scene but get close to your subject, it is super sharp, it is super fast focusing, it is super expensive, which begs the question, should you go with the Sigma 12 to 24 for $1,400 or the Sony for $3,000? And it comes down to you. It comes down to your budget and what your needs are. Full-time professional photographers, I am telling them to go with the Sony all day long because that extra 2 millimeters, even though it's ever so slightly wider as you saw with the sample images, it still gives you more of an advantage over the 14 millimeter. It's not heavier than the Nikon 14 to 24. It's heavier than the Sigma. It's a little bigger, but in my mind, it's not so big that it's prohibitive in the bag versus the Sigma. The Sigma's nice, it's small, it travels around really well. I did well with it on the campaign trail, but it comes down to, are you a full-time photographer? Do you have the money to spend on it? If you've got all the money in the world, then buy the most expensive shit in the world and just be happy with it. It still comes down to the person behind the camera, and do you know what you're doing in order to get your exposure, your composition, and get your line straight and get everything right. At the end of the day, 90% of the people are gonna buy the Sigma because it's $1,400 freaking dollars and it's a great lens. Pros, spend the $3,000. It's gonna pay for itself over time, and that little bit of extra reach is going to come in handy and set you apart from everybody else. What do you guys think? Which one would you go with and why? Please let me know down below. Don't forget to like, share, and comment, and subscribe. Please subscribe, because if you don't want to miss these videos, go ahead and hit that. Also, right after my sign off, if you want to stick around to watch a slideshow of what I think are the best of the best images with honors, sir, from the 12 to 24 review, please stick around for that. But that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you very much for watching. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.